Hi, welcome everybody. Welcome to our fifth installment of Boost Camp, a series that we are doing for early stage cooperators. Um, so we have tonight Amber Jones of Namberjo Consulting, and I am so excited to have you here to share about leadership development to keep your co-op strong. If folks want to sign up for the 6th and 7th in the series. I will put the link in the chat. And yeah, we will be sending a evaluation at the end of the meeting. We'd love to hear your feedback. And you can, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and Amber will let you know when is a good time for questions. And I will turn it over to you, Amber. Go ahead. Let me stop my share.
So forgive me because I haven't done a whole lot of PowerPoint presenting in Zoom. So, and I'm also adjusting my plan based on the number of people in the room. Okay. So let me make sure. There's interview up. Here. Sorry. Does anyone know the specific way to share the PowerPoint and keep my presenter view visible to me? I know there's like a trick with it. If anyone's familiar, if not, I will do a split screen situation.
Yeah, I haven't figured that trick out.
Okay.
Try turning it on after you share, maybe.
Okay. Let's see. All right, let's go from memory. All right, so tonight's session is all about leadership development, and particularly thinking about how to support your co-op through leadership development. And so here are just some general like Zoom tips, just in case it's helpful for anyone. But remain muted if you're not speaking. On the right side are some definitions of what the various icons do at the bottom of your window. Like Noemi said, if you have questions throughout, please add them to the chat. I don't think we have Q&A enabled here, but the chat is just fine for the number of people we have. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat as I notice them, or when we get to the end as well, I will take time to look through any questions. All right, so I know we introduced ourselves briefly, but I kind of just want to hear from everyone who's on the call. Since there aren't a huge number of us, we don't have to do breakouts for this, but just share a little bit about how you're feeling coming into the space. You can repeat your name, share your pronouns if you would like, organization and role. Maybe some folks weren't here when we first introduced ourselves. But then, yeah, just share a bit about how you're feeling coming into the space. What do you hope to get out of our time together? And what do you need to be present and stay energized, knowing that we're at the end of the day for many folks. So I'm going to go in the order based on who I see on my screen. So Scott Christensen.
I'm on the train right now.
Oh, you're
so
on the
just so
train. Sorry.
yeah, I had a little bit of trouble.
Okay. If you want to put something in the chat, you can in response to the grounding. What about Crystal Davis?
Hi, Crystal Davis. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah, it's the end of the workday, pick up from after school for me too. So trying to get in and get settled to listen in. But I am the co-founder of the Southern Bee Alliance. We just switched to LLC. The B stands for Birthing Empowerment and Entrepreneurship. So we're a multi-stakeholder co-op that is we're providing like co-op childcare services to other social justice and grassroots organizations, but we're also open to doulas who are looking for additional support and training and having a membership being a part of a co-op. And what I'm looking to get from our time together today is just to really dive in a bit more in leadership, maybe in the what I think you'll be covering is maybe in the co-op space, because I am a nonprofit leader. And that's, that can be two totally different things. So looking forward to learning more about that. And I feel it coming into the space. I feel all over the place, and not anything like personal with this, just the time of day and trying to get in and get situated, but glad to be here.
Thank you, Crystal. All right. Next I see Co-op Meadville, Autumn, and all I can see is Jam, but you reintroduce yourselves and oh, James, there we go. Okay.
Hi, I'm James from Meadville, Pennsylvania, he, him. Organization is Common Roots, and I am the Director of Housing Services, and feeling really good coming into this space. And I hope to just get some good leadership techniques coming out of tonight, and to be present and stay energized. Just, yeah, everybody engaged.
Yeah, I can go Autumn Vogel, she, her pronouns, on staff at KDC as a co-op developer, also with Melissa on the board of the Northwest Pennsylvania Investment Cooperative. Holding down the fort here in our watch party. We've been doing some place-based watch parties in Meadville. And yeah, I think yeah, end of a long day. It's like beautiful outside. And so like feeling like, okay, to be here and to get what I need, like I know that these spaces like are really valuable for me when there's an opportunity for connection. So like glad that, I'm here in person with a buddy. Would love to see people's faces on the Zoom and like connect if people get to a place where they can. So love to make the connection or at least hear your voices. It's nice to hear voices too. So glad that folks are chiming in. I'll pass it to Lacey, our other Meadville friend.
All right, my name is Lacey Molesky, pronouns she, her. I am located in Meadville, Pennsylvania. I am with Common Roots, also with James, and my role is the cooperative developer. I am new to the organization. I just started the beginning of March, so I'm really trying to learn as much as possible. Coming into this space, I'll be honest, it was a stressful day helping out with the family situation. So I was communicating with an attorney throughout the day. It did have a happy ending. I hope my sister, she said it was like a light at the end of the tunnel. So that feels good. I hope to get out of this together, kind of like the connection of other people and just their experiences, since I'm new to basically like the whole co-op. And what do I need to be present and stay energized? I do have something to drink within hand's reach. I do have my camera on, so that I think that being able, like as Autumn said, to see faces, hear people speak, that engagement, that will keep me energized, because as people speak, then I'll get my brain thinking of different things. So, but I will be respectful and use the chat and not talk out as the presenters present. Ta-da! So I'll pass it to the next person. How Crystal Davis? Or did she speak? Gabriella? Okay, let's try another person.
I think Gabriella was coming off mute. There we go.
Okay.
Sorry, my computer's pretty slow, so my apologies. I've been listening to you, so I was waiting to get on and thought, okay, well, I'll wait for everybody to introduce themselves. My name is Gabriela Jacobo. I am in Denver. Well, I'm right now in Aurora, Colorado, and that is where our cooperative is. It is El Alba Cooperative. It's a food services, so it's catering and commissary kitchen. We have been developing this co-op for the last 6 years, and we finally did some fundraising to build the commissary kitchen, which is the main tool for our co-op members. I think the way that I'm coming into the space is curious, because I think that I'm a learner from other experiences, what other people have, what other people share. So I'm right now very curious, as I'm panicking. We have this kitchen that we open, and we are restructuring our membership, and going through a lot of stuff. So I would like to, I'm very open to learning and gain experience on to hopefully that will support my decision making on next steps for our cooperative. I think I said I kind of like responded to 2 questions in one, and then what I need to stay to be present and stay energized, just to continue to stay in the flow with all of you in the conversation. So yeah, that's it. I'm not sure if somebody else is pending to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Gabriella. Yeah.
We have our hosts, maybe. Noemi, Melissa. And let me see if Scott dropped anything in the chat. Okay, here we go. I can read Scott's from the chat. Scott Christensen, he, him, is based in Baltimore, Maryland, works for the University of Maryland on entrepreneur support and funding. Similar to others, at the end of the day, sitting on the train, and will be riding his bike a little later, so might have trouble speaking, but Scott is always looking to learn more, especially related to leadership in a cooperative context. Thank you, Scott. All right. Noemi or Melissa, would you like to?
I can hop in. Thanks. So Noemi Gishbens, Executive Director at KDC, she, her pronouns. And I have been looking forward to this session throughout our boost camp. Of course, the whole thing is great, but leadership development is like the thing I love best. And so I'm super excited to hear what Amber has to share with us and be part of the learning. And thanks for accommodating my last minute getting dinner ready, but I'm back on camera now. So last person is Melissa.
Yes. Northwest Pennsylvania Investment Co-op invests in real estate. We purchase buildings and renovate and lease them to entrepreneurs and social organizations. And I am more of a startup. I'm 1 year on the board, and not that much longer than that as a member. So I want to learn everything I can. We want to grow, and I want to be part of that in a way that is best for everyone in the co-op. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everyone, for sharing a bit more about yourselves and how you're showing up. It's helpful for me to kind of like ground by knowing who's in the space and how you're arriving, what you may need. And it also kind of speaks to our like leadership development and what's needed, particularly within our co-ops. So I encourage, if you don't start all your meetings with some type of grounding check-in, I find it very helpful when working collectively with others to know how we're arriving. All right, so who am I? I'm Amber. I use she, her pronouns. I don't like to introduce myself in terms of like professional things, but that is part of who I am. But before that, I am a daughter, younger sister. I also am an aunt. I have 8 nieces and nephews combined, and I just became a great aunt recently, so that's exciting. Born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, or Piscataway, Susquehannock land. Both sides of my family descend from the American South. Were, experienced the impacts of the slave trade. But I also was able to do an African ancestry test to learn more about my family's origin prior to coming here. So as you see here, there are a few different kind of like tribal groups or, indigenous groups within the continent that I derive from. I also am an organizer, not by profession, but just by life experience and happenstance. I also am a cooperator. I would say more recently, I wouldn't say I'm like a super seasoned cooperator, but I've really dove in within the past 5 years along that journey, and we'll share a little bit more about that as well. I firmly believe in building community, connecting with others, connecting people to others. I enjoy facilitating. I recently began working currently for myself as a consultant and with a few different organizations doing very different types of work. But I also consider myself a next economy midwife. And some of you may be familiar with the Next Economy MBA program that is led by Lift Economy. And I consider myself a next economy midwife because those of us who subscribe to kind of the principles of next economy are here to help, birth what the next economy will be. So that's why I use that terminology. Okay, there we go. So I mentioned where I am. Also, I think it's very important to just kind of acknowledge where you are, where we come from, the story of the land that we're connected to kind of says a lot about our context and how we experience our environment. So I always try to ground in that as well. All right, so we will explore some definitions of leadership tonight. We will also identify qualities of effective leadership and introduce some leadership development tools as well. Well, rather resources. So, and then anything else that emerges as we are led. All right. So we did our check-in. I shared our objectives. I like to always have some agreements as well. We will talk about what leadership is, what leaders are, and how we lead from within. And then we'll kind of reintegrate like all of this information that we're absorbing. And then you can provide feedback. And Noemi also shared there will be evaluation as well. Normally, I would ask if there are any proposed changes to the agenda. But if I have your consent to proceed with our schedule agenda for tonight, you can leave a thumbs up either on camera or use a little indicator. Thank you. Thank you. I'm seeing thumbs. I'm seeing thumbs. Okay. I think we're good to go. All right. Sorry. Oops. All right. So I have some standard agreements that I enjoy and I find helpful in group spaces. Things like take space, make space. There's also this really cool rule, 3x3, which comes from the School of Facilitation. And it's basically, if you are a person who tends to speak a lot, to allow 3 people to speak before you speak again, or to allow, I think it's like 3 minutes to pass before you speak again, but that's the 3x3 rule. Also, if you're sharing about an experience, feelings, beliefs, please use I statements, and do our best to also obtain consent before speaking for others, and also owning our intentions and our impacts. Are there others that folks also like to practice within group spaces? If so, feel free to add them to the chat, and we can kind of extend our list as a group. These are the ones that resonate with me in particular, but I know folks have other great ones as well. So if anything comes to mind that's not here that you want to add, please do so in the chat, or you can raise your hand and say it aloud. Yes, thank you. Autumn and James, try to avoid jargon. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification. That is a great one. Thank you. Okay, remember this is now part of our potential list of agreements. Thank you for that offering. Anything else? Anything else? All right. So to recap, we now have try to avoid jargon, don't be afraid to ask for clarification, as well as the ones I already listed, take space, make space, use I statements, ask for consent for speaking for others, and own both intentions and impacts. So that is our list of agreements as it currently stands. Anyone have any questions or proposed changes to what's listed here besides what was offered already? Okay. So with that, if you consent to us proceeding with these agreements, again, you can give a thumbs up. I see thumbs, I see thumbs, I see thumbs. All right. Thank you. So now I can clean them up. Okay. So, I think it's important when we're defining something, especially a term that we're familiar with, that's often used, starting by grounding in what we know and what resonates with us. So I would like everyone who's participating in this session to take about a minute just to think about who comes to mind when you hear the word leader. And for those of us who are in a cooperative, there may be a person in your cooperative that comes to mind for you when you hear that word leader. But I want us to just take a minute to think about it. And then, let's see. All right, so some folks have already put their names in the chat. But once you've had a chance to think about it, I'm going to give you about a minute, couple minutes to throw your names in the chat. And this will be how we start to shape our definition of leader. So starting with people that come to mind when we hear the word leader. All right, and go. Thanks. I think we have responses from most people. If you have not responded yet in the chat, feel free to keep adding your leaders. All right, I see some examples here. We have Michelle Obama. We have Julie, director at Common Roots, Ella Baker, and I see we have a list: Julie, Brad, Janie, Emily, Julie Wilson, and Autumn Vogel. Noemi, everyone at KDC, staff and board. Gabriella shared our colleague who is a university vice chancellor, also other people at church and in personal life that Gabriella considers great leaders. Okay, thank you. I'm going to, sorry if I'm putting anyone on the spot, but I want to hear a little bit more from a few of you in response to this question. Well, actually, not necessarily in response to this question, but I want to hear more about why you named the individuals you did. So Lacey, you mentioned Michelle Obama. If you are comfortable coming off mute and describing more, you can either say in 3 words what qualities you would describe her or why you named her.
Courageous, brave, unconventional.
What about Noemi? Ella Baker?
Building the leadership of others.
And then I'm also curious, the person who listed Julie, Brad, Jamie, and Emily, what would you say kind of collectively are some qualities about the folks that you named?
I think that across different co-ops and different efforts, these are folks who are able to like see results, and I think for the most part inspire and are competent. And to me that means a lot.
Awesome. And if others who I didn't call on, if you would like to put in the chat words that you would use to describe, oops, did not mean to advance, words that you would use to describe the person or persons that you named, I would love to hear from you as well. All right. So when looking up a definition of a leader or leadership, a lot of people go to the dictionary, particularly the Merriam-Webster dictionary in many of our contexts. So some of the words that Merriam-Webster used to describe a leader are things like first rank, a guide, a conductor, presiding, principal, and a position, right? So these are ways that maybe in conventional society, we hear about leadership or taught to view leadership. And so the idea is, you know, someone being first, someone being ahead, someone being in charge, someone guiding others who then follow them, right? Oftentimes leader and follower are kind of, you know, companions, right? Sorry. Okay. So I'm also trained in sociocracy, particularly the version that is taught by Sociocracy for All. Sociocracy also referred to often as dynamic governance. And it gives a definition of a leader, which is a process role within a circle. And the purpose of the leader is to connect its circle to the wider context of the organization. It also keeps the circle on its aim and domain. So what it's been tasked with doing, just making sure that it's sticking to that. It checks in on members' well-being, you know, just kind of the overall well-being of the circle. If things are not going as well or according to plan, they kind of intervene when needed. And they also help the facilitator with planning and agenda setting. So as the circle meets repeatedly, builds a backlog of priorities, the leader helps to keep track of what's pertinent for the circle and uses that to help with setting the agenda in partnership with other roles. So yeah, that's a very, like, you know, practical, functional definition of a leader within a particular context. I also found this definition from the Kansas Leadership Center, where they say leadership is mobilizing others to seize opportunities and to make progress on tough challenges. So this makes some of the qualities that you all shared come to mind, right? Being results oriented, inspiring others, you know, being competent, being brave and courageous, you know, kind of willing to embrace challenges, sometimes maybe being unconventional in order to embrace those challenges. So, and then mobilizing others, as Noemi said, Ella Baker is a person who builds others in their leadership. All right. I also found this quote really compelling. A leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, "We did it ourselves." So this comes from a Chinese philosopher. And what I find interesting about this definition, one, it doesn't come from a Western context, right? So oftentimes, I would say within this, you know, kind of like United States kind of context, within this kind of like Western, quote unquote, first world context, a lot of what is kind of uplifted as leadership or leadership qualities has to do with personalities, right? People who kind of command contention. Oh, no, not contention, who command attention. People who are courageous or brave, you know, people who take risks, people who do things that maybe others are afraid to do or unwilling to do. Whereas this definition, it kind of turns that on its head. It makes leadership kind of a matter-of-fact thing. Like, you don't know that someone is necessarily a leader when they're leading effectively, because everyone feels empowered, everyone feels like they contribute to the outcome, and most importantly, what you aim to do gets done. So this is just a very different kind of philosophy and take on leadership. I would say, as cooperators, this may be more aligned with how many of us perceive and experience leadership, particularly in sharing power with others. But it's something that, if we're used to other contexts or we're trained in other frames of leadership, it may take some adjusting to see leadership in this way. So according to this definition, to kind of reiterate, in this case, leadership is not necessarily power. It's not domination. It's not praise or attention seeking. It's not about who's most visible. It's not even about a title, a position, or rank. None of those things are necessarily required to be a leader by this definition, right? So with that in mind, then what is important in leadership? So I want to ask you all, when you think about someone that you would lead alongside, or someone that you would potentially select in the role of leading a circle or leading your organization, what qualities are most important to you? If you have to choose a select number of qualities, what matters the most to you in a leader? And you can put your responses in the chat. Also, if you would like to come off mute and share aloud, you can do that as well. I'm asking this because I'm curious to see, compared to what you shared in the first example, is it directly aligned with what is most important to you in terms of qualities in a leader that you would choose? Okay, let's see. Lacey said someone who's a trailblazer, who's evolving and open-minded. Someone who's able to bring people together and find alignment. Someone who's accountable. Okay, that's great. Responsibility, drive. Someone who takes time to bring people along. Okay. Any others? These are great. Thank you, thank you. And if you need more time, please keep adding to the chat. Someone who's able to make nuanced determinations. Reliable. Okay, okay. So this is interesting because there definitely are some parallels to what's already been shared. But I feel like these qualities that are being named are getting very specific. See, a person that recognizes their peers by acknowledging their talents, listens, trust, and respect. Forgiving. Okay, okay. So great, thank you all. So, based on what you all have shared here, there is an importance of bringing people together, bringing people along, acknowledging what people are contributing to the space, also taking accountability and responsibility. Someone who's willing to be nuanced, make nuanced determinations, not just, you know, go with what they know and what, you know, maybe their first instinct or their go-to, you know, approach, but being willing to like adjust, be nuanced. Forgiving. Yes. So thank you all for sharing your most important qualities in leaders. And I want you to keep these in mind because these are the things that when you're developing as leaders within your cooperative, when you're developing leaders within your cooperative, you know, these are the things that may not show up on a list of roles and responsibilities, but this is what really matters to you, like at your core. And these are things that you can list as maybe what people would call soft skills, but are very important to being able to influence and encourage and persuade others to come along on the journey with you. So I appreciate you all for sharing your most important qualities in a leader. Something to keep in mind In an organization, your leaders are an indicator of your values. So even if you state certain values in your value statement for your organization, right? A lot of times we choose things that are aspirational. This is our ideal. This is our North Star. This is where we want to be. But who we perceive as leaders and who we choose as leaders indicate what our values currently are. For example, some people might say that who we select in elections is an indicator of where society's values are evolving or are, broadly speaking, right? Sometimes who is hired or promoted within an organization will determine where the organization's values are. So it may say that we value things like inclusion, diversity, equity, that we want to promote from within, and then we bring someone in that represents the majority of our organization and isn't from within. What does that say about what your values actually are compared to what you state? So it's very important to be mindful about when we are selecting leaders within our organizations, when we're hiring people to be in roles, thinking about what are the values that we are aiming to embody. And when it comes down to it, we're making decisions, what does that say about where we are? Also, leaders are a reflection of our culture. To be a successful leader, to be someone who is capable of leading, you have to kind of match the culture of the organization or where the organization is moving, right? So if a leader contradicts the current culture or contradicts where the culture is moving, they will struggle to be effective. They will struggle to feel empowered, right? So our leaders say a lot about our culture, and not just who they are and how they show up, but how they experience leadership and how they succeed or don't succeed in leadership is a reflection of our culture. Our leaders are also a predictor of our direction. So again, if leaders are struggling, or if leaders are showing up and maybe don't seem to be a fit of our past, kind of trajectory, that can be a predictor of where you are moving. So a lot of times, particularly in like top-down organizations, sometimes a group will select a new CEO or director, and it doesn't necessarily match the past decisions. But that can be an indicator of where your board is moving, how your strategy is evolving. So it's very important when we are choosing leaders to think about not just where we are, but where we're trying to go. And our leaders are people who help to take us, in that direction. And so within a cooperative context in particular, because leadership is shared, because oftentimes it's not hierarchical or top down, but dynamic, what that means is you're essentially choosing a team of navigators to help you moving your direction. So thinking about what's most important in different areas of your work and what direction those areas of your work need to go, those leaders help to set you on that course. So the Kansas Leadership Center, they identify 4 key competencies of leadership. These are being able to diagnose a situation, being able to manage oneself, being able to energize others, and being able to intervene skillfully. Again, these aren't brand new concepts, particularly to the people in this session. In fact, many of the things that you named in the leaders that you identified, or the qualities that are important to you, align with these 4 competencies. There's also alignment with our cooperative values. So a leader being able to diagnose a situation, you're able to be honest, you're able to be open about what's happening, so that you can be specific and clear in terms of what your situation is. Also being able to manage oneself, that's very similar to self-help, self-responsibility. Being able to energize others, whether it's through their democratic participation, ensuring that there's equivalency and equity in how decisions are made, building a strong sense of solidarity and caring for others that we work with. And then being able to intervene skillfully. This is, being responsible in how we make decisions, thinking about how our decisions impact others. And you could say that all of these values also contribute to intervening skillfully, but generally, being aware of how our decisions have ripple effects on others and our organization overall. Ways to develop our leadership skills. So as leaders, it's important to always remain curious. This means that we are training often. We are sometimes reading together collectively. A lot of cooperatives start with study circles. If your co-op didn't start with a study circle, it can be a great way to kind of build shared learning, shared language, shared understanding with each other. You could do things like lunch and learns. So you don't necessarily have to read entire books, but you can read articles, you can read together, find ways to make it as accessible as possible, but just encouraging overall curiosity. And not just through training, but gathering feedback regularly. So remaining curious is also about creating opportunities to hear from others about what they're experiencing, not assuming because someone doesn't say something in the middle of a meeting that they don't have an opinion or perspective on it. You can do things like feedback surveys. You can do things like, like having people respond anonymously to a question, to a prompt. You can also break up into smaller circles. So rather than doing certain things in a larger group, having certain conversations in a larger group, if you split up into smaller groups, sometimes those who are quieter will feel more empowered to vocalize what they're thinking, what they're feeling. So just being mindful of how you can receive feedback from different people, depending upon how they best communicate. It's also important that we are working collectively. Within an organization where we are sharing democratic control, where all of us kind of own what we are doing and the outcome of what we are doing, not just within a co-op, but in any type of organization, working collectively is your biggest strength, because it means that 4 things that keep your organization functional aren't reliant upon one person or 2 people who know how to do them. Instead, by working collectively, by rotating roles, by rotating responsibilities, by offering opportunities for people to shadow each other, to learn from each other's skills and best practices, we have an environment where everyone is competent, to what was shared earlier about those important leadership qualities. If your entire team is competent, if your entire team has some awareness of what the organization does and the various functions needed for it to operate, then if one person moves on or isn't able to do that function at that time for whatever reason, you're still able to continue going forward with the work because you have that capacity within collectively. Another important quality to develop is being able to embrace change, recognizing that we have the ability to influence the future, but we can't control or predict the future. And there are a lot of things outside of our personal realm of control that may shape what happens within our cooperative. So things that are happening in the market, things that are happening politically, things that are happening economically, funders changing their priorities and strategies, customers having different options or choices or circumstances that they're facing. So we have to be adaptable to change. And one of the ways that we embrace change is by thinking strategically, thinking ahead, planning for things to change, not assuming that our current circumstances will always be the case. So when we think about our budgets, for example, when we think about our goal setting, not just putting something on paper and sticking to that like firmly, but checking in periodically. So whether it's monthly, quarterly, checking in about what is happening in the moment, and if things have changed from what we initially predicted, being adaptable, being able to reconcile with what is happening in the present moment. Another key competency or important way to develop ourselves as leaders is to accept help. Going back to working collectively, we have to be willing to know when we need help. We have to be willing to accept help when we don't necessarily know that we need it. We have to be open again to that feedback that tells us that maybe there is an area where I need to improve or our organization needs to improve, and not thinking that we have to do everything internally. Sometimes it can be a little bit frightening to invite other people into our spaces, especially if we don't know them, we're not as familiar with them. We may feel like, they don't know our entire situation, they don't know all of our people. And so I don't necessarily want to share what's happening, in depth with these individuals. But if we have people in our community that we trust, that we have relationships with, starting there to seek outside facilitation, making sure that there are mediators that you can call upon if you're running into conflicts within your organization. And, again, to remaining curious, right? Sometimes training can be helpful. Sometimes not just training, but letting someone else lead the conversation, facilitate the conversation can be helpful. But being able to recognize when you've done everything within your power and it's time to invite in the support of our community. And lastly, it's important that we remain grounded. So not just grounded in the sense of being present and, attuned with what's happening in our bodies, with what's happening in our environment, but also not getting, above ourselves to think that, we don't need to continue learning. We don't need to continue evolving. The moment that we feel like we have peaked or we've reached our peak, that means that we're actually starting to fall, right? So keeping in mind that there's always something new to learn, as things change, as our world changes, as our industry change, as our society changes, our culture changes, technology changes, there's always something new to learn. And the minute that we stop learning, the minute that we stop growing and that we stop evolving, then that means that we are essentially saying that it's time for us to, move on and maybe consider what's next. So those are some key factors to continuing to develop our leadership skills. So let me look at the time we have left. All right, so we are almost at time. So we won't necessarily do this discussion question, but I would like to encourage you to think about a challenge that you may be having within your organization, something that may be, you are struggling with from a leadership capacity. And thinking about our 4 key competencies and the things that help us to develop as leaders, what could you pull from that to support you in navigating this challenge? So that's more of a food for thought for us to take with us after the session tonight. But with that, I do want to share some resources. So these are organizations that provide training and that also have communities of practice for those of us who may be looking to develop as leaders, whether as individuals or collectively with our other co-op members. And one of the things that I've learned and recognized the importance of is having a shared language and having shared capacities within your cooperative. So if you are doing training, as much as possible, trying to do that as a group. But these are a few organizations, including Keystone and their Boost Camp, that provide leadership training and various skills to support you in your leadership. So there may be others as well, and I encourage you to ask people that are part of your network for other recommendations, but these are some of the ones that I've come across and would recommend, as well as many other cooperators that I know have sought out training from these organizations. So with that, I know we're at time, so I'm trying to stick with our time, but does anyone have any questions that they would like to raise for me or for the group at large tonight?
Have you seen somebody go from being maybe not such a great leader to being a much better leader? And what do you think helped them do that?
I would say a couple of things. So normally, leadership development is initiated by some type of challenge or hurdle. So, people may come in kind of in one place within their understanding of, leadership, and then they run into an unexpected hurdle, challenge, barrier. And because of that, how one responds, I would say, determines kind of the trajectory after the fact. So responding by seeking out and receiving feedback, for example, being open to that feedback, even if it's difficult to receive. Also seeking out training to continue to develop skills over time, having support in receiving that training. So for the folks who may recognize that there's a need or, a challenge, offering resources to help the person access what additional capacities they may need to develop over time. Yeah, and I would say, continuing to come back and struggle through it makes a big difference, as opposed to kind of, just shutting down in the moment that that hurdle comes up, that, kind of blocks one in being able to see that evolution.
Thank you.
I don't know how much time we can potentially go over, but if anyone else has anything, I do want to offer time and space for people to either share if you did have a challenge you wanted to share about, or if you have a question, generally speaking.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Amber. I hope people, if you have questions, you'll ask them. We got started a little late, so fine to stay going. Oh, and the survey about tonight's session is already in the chat. Thank you, Autumn. Right. Well, talking about receiving feedback, we really do value the feedback that we get. So Thank you for letting us know how it's going. And we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks. We will have our 6th session, which will be with a lawyer, Will Pillsbury, and where any questions that have to do with legal matters. Oh, I forgot to ask. You can ask him. Right. And if you missed any of the earlier sessions, the recordings are being uploaded to our YouTube channel. So please check them out. Thank you so much, Amber.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm gonna
Okay,
stop the recording.